He didn't even call me. After years of deployments, surgeries, and dodging bullets on foreign soil, I opened my phone to find just one message from my father. "Don't come home this Christmas. We've decided it's best you stay away. No, how are you? Number, we miss you." Just a text that read more like a rejection slip than a note from family. My name is Rachel Monroe, and wherever you're watching this from, stay with me. Have you ever walked through fire only to return home and realize your own family would rather keep the door shut? The military taught me how to shut down emotions, but that single text, it hit harder than a mortar blast. My mom stayed silent. My brother said nothing. It felt like they had all silently agreed to cut me off right before the holidays. I sat in my small one-bedroom apartment, Christmas lights flickering across the window, and wondered what I had done to deserve that kind of coldness. I typed back just one word, "Fine," and I meant it. Not the kind of fine you say when you're secretly hoping someone will ask again. No, this was the final kind of fine. The kind that says, "You won't get another chance to hurt me." I shut my laptop, deleted the flight ticket I'd bought weeks earlier, and poured myself a glass of red wine. I raised it to the air and toasted to family. 5 days later, my phone lit up with 10 missed calls. One from my brother, one from my dad, four from my mom, and one from their lawyer. That last one made my chest tighten because by then, it was already too late. Too late to take back what I'd set in motion. Too late to erase what they had said. Too late to undo the letter I had already mailed. They thought I'd come back the way I always did, loyal, forgiving, desperate for scraps of affection. But this time, I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't the soldier begging for a place at their table. I came home wearing a different kind of armor, and they were about to learn how dangerous a daughter can be once she finally stops trying to earn her father's love. So let me take you back before the silence, before that text, before the betrayal that cemented everything. I was 18 when I enlisted. At my graduation, my father didn't even hug me. He just muttered, "Try not to embarrass yourself out there." That was his version of love criticism, wrapped as advice. But I didn't join the military to make him proud. I joined because I needed to prove to myself that I was worth something. Because home never felt safe. Not with the way he looked at me like I was a burden he never asked for. When I earned my stripes as a sergeant, I flew home for Christmas, hoping maybe, just maybe, he'd acknowledge it. Instead, the first words out of his mouth were, "Shovel the driveway before you take your boots off. No congratulations. No, we're proud of you. Just work." Mom was no better, always wringing her hands, whispering, "Just don't make him angry." And my brother, Tyler, followed Dad like a shadow. He learned young that siding with him kept the peace. So I played the good soldier. I called on every birthday, sent flowers for anniversaries, mailed checks when the car broke down or the roof leaked. They never asked how I was, never asked where the money came from. They just cashed it, maybe sent back an emoji sometimes, not even that. And still, every year, I hoped that maybe one Christmas, I'd walk in and actually feel like I belonged. That my seat at the table wasn't an obligation, but a welcome. But this year was different. I was done with service. Papers signed. Discharge official. A modest pension in hand. My heart was tired, but it was finally free. All I wanted was to come home, bake cookies with Mom, hear Tyler talk about his new job, maybe just maybe get a pat on the back from Dad. Instead, I got that text. And that's when I set the plan in motion. 5 years earlier, during one of my rare leaves, Dad had asked me to co-sign a loan for the house's second mortgage. I was just 25, exhausted, and still naive enough to believe his approval meant something. He called it a formality, a technicality, and desperate to please him, I signed without reading the fine print. Back then, it felt like nothing. But after his message, the one that detonated something cold inside me, I went digging through old military email archives, looking for a distraction. That's when I found it. A scanned copy of the loan documents, stamped, witnessed, signed by him, signed by me. This time, I read it carefully. And hidden in the legal jargon was a detail I'd missed years before. In the event of borrower default or voluntary transfer, the cosigner assumes controlling interest over the property until the loan matures. Controlling interest. I sat back, stunned. My father, the man who told me I wasn't welcome under his roof, had forgotten one small detail. On paper, I wasn't just his daughter. I was his majority co-owner. The irony tasted sweeter than any holiday dessert. That night, I called a lawyer, a real estate specialist I'd met during a seminar back on base in Tampa. Hypothetically, I asked, what happens if a cosigner holds majority interest and the borrower tells her not to come home anymore? There was a pause, then a chuckle. They shouldn't have told her that, the lawyer said, because if she wants to take control of the property, she can. So I drafted a letter, not dramatic, not emotional, just factual, calm, direct, legal, effective immediately. I will be exercising my controlling interest as cosigner and legal partial owner of the property located at 12 Windmere Lane. All rights and responsibilities will now be executed through counsel. You will be contacted shortly. I mailed it certified old school, intentional, so they'd all open it together, so they'd all feel it hit at once. Then I booked myself a quiet cabin in the Smoky Mountains. Snow falling, fire crackling, phone off, and 5 days later, when I turned that phone back on, I saw the missed calls, and I smiled, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. For the first time in my life, I didn't need their permission to come home, because legally, they were living in my house. The first call I listened to was from Mom. Her voice cracked before the words even formed. Rachel, honey, please call us back. Your father didn't mean it that way. We just thought it would be easier this Christmas without the tension. You know how he gets. Please, don't do anything rash. I could almost picture her sitting at the kitchen table, wringing her hands, whispering so Dad wouldn't hear. The next voicemail was my brother. Short, defensive. Ratch, this is messed up. You can't just take over the house. Dad's furious. He says you're trying to ruin us. Call me back. We need to fix this. Then came Dad's voice. Cold, controlled, every syllable sharp. Enough to cut glass. You ungrateful brat. After everything I've done, this is how you repay me. Fine. You want to play lawyer games? We'll see who wins. You were never strong enough to stand on your own without me, and you know it. I let the message finish, sat in silence, and then played the last one, the one from the attorney they'd scrambled to hire. This is Mitchell and Hayes calling on behalf of the Monroe family. We received your notice and would like to open a dialogue before escalation. Please contact us immediately to discuss next steps. Escalation. The word rang like music, because what they didn't know was that this wasn't an act of spite. It was an act of survival. For years, I had been financing their comfort while they treated me like a stranger, paying bills, covering debts, mailing checks they never even acknowledged. And the moment I stopped being useful poof, they cut me out. But this time, the leverage was mine. I poured another glass of wine, set my phone back down, and stared at the snow outside my cabin window. For the first time in decades, Christmas didn't mean begging for a seat at their table. It meant building one of my own. A week later, I finally agreed to meet them. Not at the house, my house, legally speaking, but at a neutral spot. A diner off the interstate. The kind of place with cracked leather booths and coffee that tastes like burnt ash. I got there early, ordered black coffee, sat facing the door. Old habits die hard. First to arrive was Mom, She looked smaller somehow, wrapped in her heavy coat, eyes darting nervously as though afraid someone might recognize us. "Rachel," she whispered, sliding into the booth. Her hand twitched toward mine, but she pulled it back when Dad walked in. He filled the space before he even sat down, his presence thick with arrogance. Tyler followed right behind him, carrying that same expression. He'd worn since we were kids the look of someone who'd already chosen a side. No greetings, no small talk. Dad went straight for the kill. You think a piece of paper makes you powerful. You think some fine print gives you the right to humiliate your own family. I sipped my coffee, steady. No, Dad, respect gives someone that right. And you ran out of respect a long time ago. His jaw tightened. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. Mom's eyes brimmed with tears, but she said nothing. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. This isn't about revenge. It's about boundaries. You made it clear I wasn't welcome in your home. Fine, but you forgot. It isn't just your home. Dad didn't even glance at the paperwork. He shoved it back toward me. You'll regret this. Blood is thicker than contracts. You'll see. I leaned forward, my voice low. Calm. Measured the way it gets when you're holding the upper hand. Blood is only thicker when it acts like family. You taught me that. For the first time in years, he had no response. Just silence. Mom whispered, "Please, can't we just talk this through?" But the truth hung heavy between us. We'd already talked for decades. I had begged. I had hoped. And nothing ever changed. Now, change was no longer a request. It was a reality. 2 weeks later, I drove back to Windmere Lane. Snow had piled high along the sidewalks. The kind of quiet that makes every sound echo louder. Their cars were in the driveway. Lights on in the living room. A plastic Santa still blinking red and green on the porch. For years, that house had been the symbol of everything I wanted: acceptance, belonging, love. Now it was simply an address with my name on the deed. I walked up the path, boots crunching against the ice, and knocked once before using my key. The room went still the moment I stepped inside. Tyler froze mid-sentence. Mom's eyes widened, her hands clutching the dish towel. Dad stood up slow, shoulders squared like I was an intruder in his kingdom. "This isn't your home anymore," he snapped. I held up the envelope, the official papers stamped and signed. "Legally, it is. You're standing in my house, and I'm done being treated like a guest in a place I co-own." The silence that followed was heavier than any battlefield I'd stood on. Mom's lips trembled. Tyler looked at Dad, waiting for a command. But for once, he didn't have one. "I don't want your apologies," I said. "I don't want your pity. All I want is the truth. Admit that you never saw me as family. Say it out loud, and then I'll decide what happens next." Dad's face hardened. His eyes burned, but no words came. And in that silence, I had my answer. I turned to Mom. She whispered, almost too soft to hear, "I'm sorry." It wasn't enough to erase the years, but it was something. I set the papers down on the coffee table. "Here's what's going to happen. I'll keep my name on this house, but I'm not your safety net anymore. The days of me paying bills, bailing you out, begging for scraps of affection, they're over. You wanted me gone. You got it. But you'll live every day knowing whose roof you're under." Then I walked out. Cold air hit my face, sharp and clean. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was leaving home. I felt like I was walking toward it. Because home isn't a building. It isn't blood. Home is the place where you finally stop apologizing for existing. And I had just found mine.